right, council meeting of February 18th, 2020 is called to order. As we stand for the pledge, I'd like to ask Megan to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mic on. It's only been every week so far. Consistent. All right, our first order of business this evening is to swear in our newly appointed council member. City Clerk Donna Nault will be swearing in Megan Feast. Can we do it up here?
I'm ready. Repeat after me. I, Megan Peace. I, Megan Peace. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear. That I am a citizen of the United States. That I am a citizen of the United States. And of the state of Washington. And of the state of Washington. That I
Support the Constitution
of the United States.
of the United States
And the Constitution and laws
and the Constitution and laws
of the state of Washington.
of the state of Washington,
And will, to the best of my judgment,
and will, to the best of my judgment,
skill, and ability,
skill, and ability,
faithfully and impartially,
faithfully and impartially,
perform the duties of the Shelton City Council,
perform the duties of the Shelton City Council,
seat number 7,
seat number 7,
for the city of Shelton, Washington,
for the city of Shelton, Washington,
as such duties are prescribed by law.
as such duties are prescribed by law.
Thank you.
And we're back to six. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Donna, will you do the roll call, please?
I will. Councilmember Feast.
Here?
Councilmember Inesco.
Here.
Councilmember Bode.
Here.
Mayor Dorsey.
Here.
Deputy Mayor
It's hard to say, isn't
Here.
it?
Councilmember McDowell. Present. Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
All right. Nice to be back to 7 again. Does the council have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go right into general public comment. Has anybody signed up for general public comment?
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Oh,
Council reports.
oh, did I miss one? Sorry.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Council reports. It's at the bottom down here. All right, so who are we gonna start with? Megan or Eric? Probably Eric. Do you have anything to report, Megan?
I can share some information. I was invited, the governor has a task force on disabilities, and I was invited to attend our town hall here that'll be held at the PUD 3 next Thursday evening from 5:30 to 7:30. And then there's a leadership breakfast at the PUD also Friday morning, which I'll attend from 8 to 10:30. So, and I'll make sure that that information is shared with the council.
Thank you.
Outside of our meetings and briefings, I have a Housing Behavioral Health Advisory Board meeting next Wednesday.
All right.
And outside of our meetings, I was actually sick most of the week.
Oh, lucky you.
Yes.
Lucky you.
All right, so outside of my regular council briefings, I attended the United Way dessert auction on the 7th. Interviewed candidates, and we chose Megan on the 11th. Mayor's Exchange on the 13th over in Olympia at the AWC building with Jeff Knighton. Today I had the MTA meeting. Looking forward to going to the EDC lunch at Alderbrook on the 19th? Yeah. 20th chamber lunch up at the PUD, and it's about crime prevention. 21st ribbon cutting and a tour of the new Mason Clinic up at the hospital. And the 22nd, we have a ribbon cutting at the Camilchi Trading Post.
26.
20 what?
26.
Okay, 26. Thank you.
I will also be attending the EDC luncheon and of course the chamber luncheon. This Friday, I will be attending the Peninsula Regional Transportation Project Organization Executive Board meeting by phone in order to also attend the Mason Clinic dedication on Friday.
Good.
Well, I've been sick, but I've been squeezing in my things that I need to do. Went to the ribbon cutting for the ISH, PNW, which means in Shelton's Home, Pacific Northwest, new gift shop downtown. So if you want to get in there and see that. I'll be at the luncheon tomorrow, the EDC luncheon. Friday, the Mason Clinic dedication. And then I too will be attending the Washington State Governor's Committee on Disability Issues and Employment. So I'll be doing that with you. And that's it.
All right, Joe?
Good evening and warmest welcomes to Councilmember Peace. Looking forward to working with you on the council for the remainder of former Mayor Rogers' term and hopefully for a long while after. Last week I attended the EDC board meeting and I wanted to share one of the interesting topics that came up was the effects that the coronavirus is having on the shellfish industry. The Asian markets the Asian exports of shellfish, be it the major players, you can figure them out in Mason County, has a pretty significant impact. Some of their business, one of the specific shellfish growers, it's almost 80% of their business is an Asian market, which is for the foreseeable future been paused, which creates a pretty interesting ripple effect in the community. Just wanted to share that with you all, and just things to be thinking about, how little issues become huge issues, and public health emergencies even have impacts on the local economy here in Shelton. So outside of that, attended a MaceCom board meeting, looking forward to the EDC lunch and cutting the ribbon with the Mason General folks. I hear there's hundreds of them going to be there on Friday, looking forward to that. So that is all.
All right, thank you. All right, now we'll go to the general public comment. Has anyone signed up for general public comment?
No one has signed up, Mayor.
No one has signed up. Okay, we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
I will move to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. We're going to have a presentation tonight. We have an LTAC presentation this evening from Liz Arbaugh, Director of Mason County Historical Society Museum. She's not here?
She is.
Oh, okay.
Come on forward.
Come on up. Yeah, you bet. I thought that was you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Just sitting there. Mayor Dorsey, Deputy Mayor Peterson, and council, thank you so much for your continued support through the city lodging tax. We've had a busy fourth quarter, although only one person visited from out of the country that we know of, 34 from out of the state, 84 from outside the 50-mile radius. The two events sponsored by the Downtown Merchants Association really boosted our numbers with over 1,000 for the Halloween event. And I only saw 2 boys who went and changed their Halloween costumes and came back a second time. And 235 for the evening Holiday Magic Snow Globe Hunt. And those events are really great because they introduce people from this area to the museum. We had our annual meeting on December 7th, and we were very sorry that Mike Fredson decided to step down as our board president. But very, very fortunate that Jan Goodpaster, who's from Hoodsport, agreed to step in to the role. She's recently retired as a regulator from the Insurance Commissioner's Office for the state of Oregon, and she's been volunteering for about a year, and she's really doing a terrific job. We had 2 events during the fourth quarter. Linda Dannon did a presentation on Mary Riddle, who was a Quinault tribal member who became an aviatrix in the 1920s through 40s. J-Hub did our Veterans Day program, which was about the fight for the Aleutian Islands between the U.S. and the Japanese during World War II. Our next event is on March 14th, and it is Washington's Undiscovered Feminists, and it will be presented by Mayumi Sudakawa, and it is in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. And it's free and open to the public. It's March 14th at 2 p.m. We've met with and we continue to work to collaborate with the Shelton School District to support them as they teach history and to our local students. And we've also had visits from 2 sections of students from Evergreen State College. The first one was an emphasis on how to use primary documents for research, and then the second group was interested in the impact of early development on the area and its effects on the present. We have a new exhibit that highlights the mosquito fleet in South Puget Sound, and we're currently working on permanent exhibits that will showcase the various small communities in Mason County, and then after that we want to develop exhibits that are focused on early industry in the area. Our volunteers have almost finished with the map scanning project. We received a grant. We purchased a scanner in the end of August, and so far they have about 60 hours in scanning and classifying the files. And then when they're done, the files will be uploaded and made available on our website. We have had altogether about 225 hours of volunteer time, and we thank the City of Shelton for its continued support. Are there any questions?
Any questions from anyone?
The event again is March 14th?
Yes.
Okay. At what time?
2.
And Liz, if I'm not mistaken, you're also seeking additional volunteers for the car show this year?
Yes.
Wanted to put a plug in.
Oh, yes,
Get
thank
that
you
now.
very much. Yes, we are looking for additional volunteers for the car club. I believe they have a meeting next Monday during the day, and for the specific time, you know, people can get in touch with the museum and we can give them more detail.
All right, thank you, Liz. All right, continuing on. There are no items for the business to discuss tonight. So we'll move on to the action agenda. Has anyone signed up for the action agenda?
No, they have not.
Community Development Director Mark Ziegler is going to share information with us about the Civic Center Rotating Art Gallery.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. It's my pleasure to bring to you tonight the Shelton Arts Commission's recommendations for the next Civic Center Rotating Art Gallery. Following the established policy, staff called for artists to apply to be juried by the Arts Commission. 4 artists applied, and the Arts Commission met on February 4th to review those submittals. Today I bring to you the 4 artists and their work to be, upon council's approval, to be installed on March 3rd and up through May 29th here in the main room of the Shelton Civic Center. One thing of note, this round, I guess, has an artist with 3-dimensional art, so that would be placed in the cabinet at the top of the stairs near the entrance to, on one side, Community Development, Public Works and Administration, the other side, Finance. So we'll once again get some art into that cabinet with the council's approval.
All right, thank you, Mark. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the Shelton Arts Commission's recommendations for placement in the Civic Center Rotating Art Gallery.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Before we go any farther, though, any council members have a question or discussion? Anyone?
Comment.
What's that?
I just have a comment.
Okay.
I love the art on the wall.
Terrific.
I think I've said it about every time we move up there, but that's just awesome. A lot of artists in Shelton.
There is.
Surrounding the area.
And the value of the Arts Commission and their work,
Oh,
effort in this project is certainly appreciated.
it is. So tell them thank you.
Certainly will.
All right, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak? that has not signed up? No? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Shelton Arts Commission's recommendations for placement in the Civic Center rotating art gallery. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. We're coming to our second general public comment. Donna, has anybody signed up?
No, I still don't have any.
All right. All right. So we're gonna go to administrative reports, and Director Ziegler has some information about the Empty Bowls project.
Thank you once again, Mayor. I passed out flyers to you earlier this evening. This is another activity and event that's produced by the Shelton Arts Commission, and this is a great annual event, the 15th year coming up, that partners art with giving back to our community. And the Shelton Arts Commission provides the clay and materials necessary for the public to come to the Civic Center on the first night of March 4th, build ceramic bowls, come back a week later on March 11th, and they decorate those bowls, glaze them, paint them, however you want to refer to it. And then again on March 18th is the big event, the big party, where for a nominal donation of $10, they can take that bowl they've produced as well as get a great bowl of soup from one of our participating restaurants, one of our community volunteers that are so generous to give back. And that donation then goes to the Saints Pantry Food Bank. Again, this is the 15th year. Over 14 years, over $19,000 has been raised for the Saints Pantry Food Bank. And it's if you haven't been there, it's a big communal event out here in the main room. We have well over 100 people that participate from all ages, from those, probably not old enough to talk much, but can get their fingers in some clay, to senior citizens and every demographic in between. So it's a great event. I encourage you to attend, but if you cannot, please help us in promoting this event, getting people out to talk with their neighbors and support a good cause. So thanks for the opportunity tonight.
I think that it would be great for the council hall to be there. Anyway, just a thought.
It's a great idea, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll see you there.
I know.
All right, thank you.
You don't have to participate all night. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You can come one of the 3 nights, 2 or 3 nights, however that works. We'll have extra bowls made the first night, so you can come in and glaze a bowl the second night, or just show up for the soup and the food on the third night, and be happy to welcome you there that evening.
And do we eat out of the bowl made, or we have?
We'll provide a paper bowl, so you don't have to eat out of the bowl that some people make. If you remember, when your kids were in elementary school and, the bowls that came home.
Yes.
A lot of those are like that, and they
I'm
might
sure
not.
because you want it to be more easily transportable at the end of the evening.
Certainly,
must be it.
that might be it, yeah, certainly.
Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Absolutely.
Any more questions or comments? All right. Let's move on to city manager report by Jeff Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. A couple of things I wanted to mention tonight. We have Spotlight Shelton events that we began last year, and we're going to continue those twice annually. First one, we are targeting mid-April. The date has not been finalized yet. We're still working out the details for that, but it will be mid-April, sometime around tax day. So at least everybody will have an enjoyable evening if it does in fact fall on that day. Second item I wanted to mention is the 2020 census is coming up, and I wanted to highlight the importance of the census to the city of Shelton and how that affects us not only for 2021, but all the way through the next decade, how that affects our shared revenues from the state, and how that affects other things, growth projections, our comprehensive plan. Basically, that 2020 census is extremely important to all communities, but especially to Shelton. And we'll have more information. We'll be working with the U.S. Census Bureau to make sure that everybody in the city is counted, and make sure that all those are accounted for, all the individuals that reside here are accounted for. And lastly, the cleanup on State Route 3. We've had several public comments about the activity on the side of State Route 3 across from the yacht club. We have been working with several different property owners that own property up there. We believe we've come to a solution, and that should be getting cleaned up relatively shortly with some help from our community partners and others. So hopefully by the middle of next week, you'll see some activity up there, and then that will all be cleaned up. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
When you're planning for the 2020 census, can we ensure that we'll have the resources available, for folks who are bilingual, make sure that we're covering the demographics that are in our city?
Absolutely. We have community partners that have very good relationships with communities that are traditionally underrepresented, and make sure we communicate with those communities to understand the importance of the 2020 census, but importance not only to the community but also to those individuals, and how it will and will not affect them.
Just to follow up on that, what is the city's actual role in supporting, I guess legally supporting the census? I mean, since it's a federal level thing, how much say do we ultimately end up having?
Say is in control of how it's conducted, not much.
Yeah.
We don't have actually too much responsibility to even participate on the city level, but it is a wise investment in order to do so. So it's not necessarily regulatory; it's more the carrot than the stick.
I'd like to chat with you someday, maybe now's the time, but at the mayor's exchange, there was that young lady mayor from some small
Mabton.
city over by Yakima.
Yep.
And she sent someone, or went herself, I'm not sure, to the schools to talk to the Hispanic population and tell them how important it is to fill out the census. And I don't know if that's something we want to look at.
That is one aspect of the communications program that we're going to roll out to help with the census. The other one, our police department has a terrific relationship with other avenues, other community outreach avenues that we can utilize to help stress the importance of that. Like I said, not only to Shelton as a whole community, but also to the individuals that reside here as well.
Okay, anyone else? Any new items for discussion? Joe has one.
However, I will defer if any other council members have something else. I'd like to allow you to go first. All right, fine. Kathy's giving me the elbow here. So in our briefings last week, we had talked, you probably all have seen the proposed, tentatively proposed paving options in the Mountain View area for this next coming paving season. And I wanted to take a minute and talk about that a little bit, mostly looking at maybe shifting and understanding a little bit better more of a cyclic process as opposed to being focused on a 20 blocks or a $200,000 instead of managing pavement needs in that way, looking at some other options and more strategically looking at that particular asset. That's one of our most expensive assets. And I have no doubts in my mind that the roads that were proposed on the initial were absolutely in need of some sort of treatment. But at the same time, I don't really know if that is the greatest need in the city. And unfortunately, when you look at it from the target of being, we got to get 20 blocks done this year, and we only have $200,000 to spend. You got to stretch that and make that work. Versus looking at the asset itself and what can we do to those assets to either prolong that life till we get to a point to do a capital improvement project that makes a little bit more sense from an economic driver or other development in certain areas of the city. I look at like the last several projects that I'll say considerable commercial development in the city, and they've all been in that, north end side, not downtown. We did a lot of work downtown, but with the hospital, with the YMCA, with Veterans Village, with many other projects in that particular area, I was just wondering, not that I need looking for answers tonight, but looking for feedback, and is there some direction that maybe we can give to the city, to staff, to say, let's look at this a little bit more strategically, perhaps even doing something along the lines of like a three-year cycle. We just did our first road rating program, correct me if I'm wrong, last year.
Point of order, shouldn't we have a motion to add this to the agenda for?
I think this is just a topic for discussion for perhaps adding to the agenda at a future date.
Okay, because none of us have that information in front of us, so that would be nice if we had it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Putting the thoughts in your brain,
Okay.
so we can make it a future agenda or something like that. But something I was thinking about pondering is potentially establishing that 3-year sort of cycle or 5-year cycle. The first year would have been last year where we did the data collection. We determined pavement index, condition index around the city, and looking at what those numbers mean and taking a full understanding of what that really means. Then coming back and trying to do and looking and understanding what some of those first touches would be. What can we buy time with if there's a chip seal or some sort of surface treatment that we could buy another 5 or 10 years in a residential neighborhood? And then maybe shifting those funds towards larger projects where we can add curb and gutter and redo drainage. I think of Front Street, right, where the traffic into Sierra Pacific is pothole alley, but we keep kind of skirting around that because it needs significant drainage improvements. It also is going to cost a lot more than the typical $200,000 annual paving season. I would rather see us make investments in fixing some of this stuff and holding off potentially on is a wider array of pavement improvements in the city. But I'm interested in having a little bit more of a discussion, perhaps like a work session or something like we were doing in the past. But it's been a while since we've done one of those, so I just wanted to throw that out there on the table. And
if there's a council consensus for a work session centered around this topic, we can certainly schedule that and provide all the information up front so that we can have, or council can have a discussion on what the priorities ought to be.
And personally, I would like to have that discussion, although if possible, perhaps put it out a little bit longer, because I would like to see the new Public Works Director be able to be engaged in that conversation, and as I know we're hiring, to me, it makes sense to engage in that conversation and make sure we have buy-in and also the perspective of that staff expertise, that professional at the table, to combine that with all of our lovely input.
Yeah. So we can definitely thread the needle on that. One of the things I'm concerned about that I'm just considering when we're looking at a project of this type is the impact on schools. So we try to make sure that we have that paving done, after school is let out and before school starts again in the fall. This year's school start date, I believe, is September 2nd. Right before Labor Day. We were looking at that this morning, actually, to make sure we could hit that window. But I think if we can do that sometime in the April to May timeframe, it would probably make the most sense. In order to actually do the project in either July or August prior to school, we have to bid it in May to hit those timelines and then make sure we get council approval. So I think if we schedule this, maybe a work session, maybe the last meeting in April or the first meeting in May, that would suit everybody's purpose, I think, if that's acceptable to council.
And hopefully this new director is coming on, or is it in March or April?
Interview process is March 2nd and 3rd, and we'll have an offer out that week, assuming there is a top contender for the position through all the interview boards and everything else. And then hopefully by the last week in March, first week in April, we'll have somebody on board.
And to Joe and Deidre's point, you know, when we go into that work session, if we're gonna make quick work of the work session, there is I'm going to assume that there's some information that we're gonna need to gather.
Oh, yes.
And have that all ready, considering what our infrastructure plans are for the next 3 to 5 years, and what our current paving plans are.
We will make sure you have all the information that it's possible to have.
And your-
And with that, could you send back out the last, I was looking for that and I could not find, couldn't put my hand on it quickly, the road rating, the complete road rating.
Oh, sure.
From last year.
Might have to come in a couple different emails, just
Yeah.
for size
I
limitations.
know it was, yeah, I had kind of like a summaries, but
Yep.
not the data.
I will make sure you all have that tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, at 6 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned.